Welcome to the Business as Mission podcast, dedicated to those who long to see God glorified in business and the nations reached for Christ. Your host is Mike Bayer, longtime BAM leader and founder of Third Path Initiative, an online education resource for starting and growing BAM businesses around the world.
So welcome to another episode of the Business as Mission podcast. I am joined by two brothers today, Colin Winrich and Jared Folks from Pure Flow Boda. Now, a lot of you around the world are going to go, what? Boda? But you'll know very quickly not only what it is, but what it means to their business and the work they're doing. So guys, welcome to the program. Really good to have you.
Thank you so much, Mike. We're honored to be here with you.
Well, the honor's mine. I know I met Jared a couple of weeks ago. We have a mutual friend in the investment community, and he told me about you. And it's like, yeah, we got to get you guys on the show. So good stuff. So I guess it's just in keeping with the spirit of the story. Colin, I'll pitch it to you first because you're the one who went overseas first and began to see something in Uganda that you just saw opportunity and need. So just tell us a little bit about that. Just you don't have to go back to the day of your birth, but just tell us a little bit about how you got to Uganda and how God began to open your eyes to what you could do there.
Absolutely. So it actually starts the day after I was born. No, I'm just kidding. So it was actually the middle of college and back in 2013. So I actually took a semester off. I was in the aviation program at Liberty University. Took a semester off to go partner with Adventures in Missions, and I wound up in the middle of Uganda. I signed up to serve in Africa, wound up in the middle of Uganda. I had no idea where they were taking me or what my partnership looked like, but it was 4 months committed to serving with 15 other young adults in that capacity, whether it was partner organizations, local churches. And I fell in love with the community. I fell in love with the people, the culture. I mean, you name it, I was immersed in a place that really brought me joy. And I built a lot of really solid friendships at that time. And so after that 4 months, I went back to the States, finished my degree. Amidst finishing my degree, the next summer, a year later, I actually took another trip back to Uganda, and I led about 4 other young adults, just a little vision trip to see, hey, God, is this something in the capacity of maybe leading a trip, leading others out into the field, partnering with other organizations in some type of capacity. I have skills, desires, and I was really young at heart, wild at heart. And I'm like, all right, God, my yes is on the table. Let's rock and roll. And so I led that trip, then came back again, finished my degree, and then moved over to Uganda full time in 2015. So that's a little bit of the backdrop. It wasn't straight into Boda Bodas, but it was, or the motorcycle taxis. It was actually first as just an opportunity to serve and partner with local organizations there.
So the first lesson for our listeners to take note of is beware of the infamous short-term mission trip. You may never.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's what happened to me in Kyrgyzstan. I went over there just like you. I fell in love with the people. I fell in love with the country. I felt alive and still do when I'm over there. So, yeah.
Absolutely. No, it's very exciting. And after that, I mean, we were a partnership platform for a lot of organizations out there from 2015 to 2017, in which at that point we started to raise the question, what does sustainability look like? And what does it look like to potentially venture into a business opportunity that would then be able to generate revenue and fuel the ministry side, fuel the, really the outputs of a lot of the labor that we were doing in and out of these remote communities. Hence, Pure Flow was quickly birthed. It's kind of crazy how it all happened, but in a small town where we were operating, we identified motorcycles, guys who are using these motorcycles as full-time employment, driving people all over the place, and soon realized that they did not own these things, but were paying on them to own them 4 or 5 times over. So it was just a very small blaring issue, right in front of our face. And so we decided to address it quickly.
So I know and Jared, jump in here because you and I were talking about this the other day as well, that what Colin began to see was a very usurious business model, right? That where the owners of the motorcycles were, I suppose technically it was a rent to own, but you'd probably never actually get there because your rent was so high. And I mean, it seemed to be a very unjust business model that was not helping anybody. and you at first, Colin, and then later you, Jared, jumped in there to resolve that.
Yeah, the problem is I'll say this first: the motorcycles, if you haven't seen them firsthand, which I hadn't until a couple of years ago, when you see it, they're everywhere, and it is how people get from point A to point B, or get goods from point A to point B in East Africa and most of the world. Actually, it's these motorcycle taxi drivers in East Africa. They are called Boda drivers, BODA, and the challenge is that you have to have them to get around because you don't own a car and infrastructure is not built well for cars. Beyond that, though, the challenge is that they're not making a lot of money doing that as a job, and so they're not able to access affordable financing solutions. And so what you mentioned earlier is true. You have a few people that own a few bikes and they're just leasing them indefinitely to people who need to make a couple dollars today to put food on the table. And so they're just stuck in this cycle where they can't get out of that. They can't save up enough money to go buy one themselves. And so that is the problem that we're looking to solve, is this access to affordable financing to own income generating assets like a motorcycle.
It's a classic story, and I really hate the term, but it applies here, where the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And so something about this, Colin, something struck you other than just, it wasn't just getting the Boda business, right? You saw something there that said, we can make a difference. How did that come about?
Well, when before we even surveyed 200 guys and found out this glaring issue in front of us, it was more or less like, what type of opportunity would drive revenue? But what opportunity too would still be focused, centered, and built upon the relational aspect of meeting people at the table. And so that's one of the beautiful things that we've been able to integrate since day one. But it was really, how do we meet these guys? Or if any business, any approach that we take, what's the discipleship model that we can embed from day one in which we build upon? And so when after we started talking to these guys and finding the issue, it was kind of building around that. It was, okay, if I say, got 6 guys on the road and finance these motorcycles, then utilizing that loan contract, I can bring these guys around a table, eat breakfast, pray, and introduce them to Christ, and just go on a journey with them. And so keep it small, but focus on the journey.
So when I was talking with you, Jared, that's part of what struck me. And I like the way, Colin, you just articulated it, is you were looking at a business from two incredibly important angles. One is, what is the revenue generating model, but what is the disciple making model? And you were looking for both at the same time. I wonder, and I have no numbers to support this, but I wonder sometimes how many of us are looking at it from one or the other angle, but not in the beginning looking at both. We care about both, but being able, like you did, to say, I've got 2 eyes, so I'm looking at 2 different things here. I love where you went. And I know, Jared, when we were talking, you were describing the way that, when these guys basically would have to come in and make their loan payment, so to speak, they would do it in person, and there would be food, which is the universal place of friendship and relationship, right? And that intrigued me. And I know, Jared, that you lit up when you were talking about just we're able to get them to come in and say, hey, thank you. We're working together. Sit down and eat with us. That's got to be more meaningful in that culture, certainly, than it is in the U.S.
It's funny, Mike. And one, I love even just this time we have together, anytime I get the opportunity, again, I think Colin would relate, to just share the story helps us gain perspective sometimes when we look in the past a little bit. It's just lighting more fires underneath me as we talk here, in all the good sense. And so anyways, I'm encouraged, but we looked at, and Colin was living this out, which is what's so encouraging and challenging to me as a brother in Christ, but also as a business partner and friend, was he was living out what Jesus did all the time. There's this phrase, it's 3 words, and it says that he reclined at table, or was reclining at table. And Jesus is doing this throughout his life, and we can read it in the accounts of the Gospels. And what's so unique about it is, yes, food was the universal language, and it still is, and it brings people together. But we were looking at what was happening when Jesus was at the table with people, when he was reclined at table. Who was he reclined with? What were the questions being asked? What questions was he asking? And so we talk about it today as we scale, and we can get to this. The challenge is, Mike, you look at it from both sides, like you just mentioned, revenue and impact, or revenue and discipleship. And you then have to, you play this game, this tension of how do we scale that without losing one or the other to be sustainable at scale and for a long time. And so we've been asking that question: what's the power of the table? What's the power when people come together at a table? And if the revenue engine for our business, which is the loans, can draw people there, if it's a vehicle, pun intended, to get people to the table.
That's Liberty University humor for those who don't.
Oh, come on, man. Yeah. And so, we're just praying that, and what we found was that when it's only what God is going to do at the table, we get the opportunity to meet him there and to invite people there. And so that's what we're still focusing on today. Even as we've gotten a little bit bigger from the first 6, we still want people to have a seat at the table. So we say we'll never outgrow the table.
So let's nail that down just a little bit, because I want our listeners to understand that the model that you created, it was not running a Boda company. You're not running a motorcycle taxi company. It's putting drivers out on your vehicles. You're loaning money to these drivers to eventually own, but in an affordable way, rent to own or lease to own this vehicle that they can use to make a living. And what I know you and I talked about, Jared, and just another thing that intrigued me was the level of interest, the cost of paying the other providers of this service left very, very little for the drivers to take home to their families. I mean, it was a really kind of the old coal mining company store sort of thing. You're bound for life. You can never escape. And you guys have created something that is profitable. It's working for you and it's scalable. You're growing it, but it's also incredibly just and gracious to the operators, which in itself is an expression of the gospel. And then using this, bring them to the table. I love that, and I can also see where that's going to already, give you guys scalability issues. So as you've grown, Colin, I guess I'll pitch this back to you. But again, anyone jump in. As you've grown from the original 6 or 8 Boda customers that you had, and it would be easy to get them around the table once a week or twice a week or whatever. How many customers, how many lessors, is that the right word? Lessees? I guess lessees. How many do you have now?
So currently we're north of 1,570.
That's a big table.
That's a few big tables. So what we've been able to do is we've been able to grow and scale outside the original first location in a small southwestern region called Rukungiri in Uganda. So we now have 5 locations. We have 5 fellowship tables with a few more on the horizon.
So if I do the math, you've got 5 locations, 5 tables, and now you've got an average. I know that's not a fair number. By the way, you're getting to meet my dog here. You get an average of 300 people per table. How does that work?
Yeah, so we actually get the opportunity to break them into fellowship groups. So every single week, they'll have their assigned time in which they come in. Now, sometimes things come up, they come in at different time frames. Sometimes we have an influx in the morning of 30 guys, but usually what we have is anywhere from 12 to 15 guys come in at certain time frames, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, breaking into Thursday. So they have their set aside time. We have a spiritual director who's able to facilitate the time at the table, but we like to keep it more intimate.
Yeah. Okay. So, I figured it would be something like that. But I love the systematic thinking you've applied to this, right? We've got I want the listeners to catch this. 1,500 currently, and probably more coming, 1,500 customers who are seeing the gospel in the way they're being treated. They're seeing the gospel in the way that they're being managed, but they're also experiencing the gospel in that you invite them to the table and you've systematized it so that it's not 300 or 100 at once. They're coming in scheduled, more or less scheduled ways. I know East Africa is not famous for schedule keeping. The concept, sure. Yeah, but the concept works, right? This is kind of your slot. Yeah. And so they're coming, and then you said you had a spiritual director. So it's not you guys, because you don't live there. So talk about that person. That's a pivotal player in this model.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Jared.
I think that was one of the structural things we had to put in place last year was how do we not lose focus on the table and the importance that we put on the table? It's right in the core of our mission as we want to grow, because the market was demanding our service at a larger scale. So as we raised more capital, deployed more capital, had more motorcycles to more assets to put into the market with more customers, how do we serve them at the table? And so we actually spun off a foundation which operates like a nonprofit and has a partner nonprofit in the US as well. But what it allows is it has people on its team that are a part of the Pure Flow team who are trained in this, but also are called to that place. They're called to that table, whether it's at one of our branches, but they also are now leading fellowships in members' homes who maybe show interest in, like, they want their community to have access to this. Maybe their wife is not going to come and get a loan from Pure Flow, but they want to have access to the power that's happening at the table. And so those spiritual directors are placed at our branches to be able to lead those tables and facilitate the conversation that happens there, and just find ways to serve our members outside of the financial freedom that the rest of our team is focused on as they're paying off their loans.
So are these Ugandan nationals? These are not Western missionaries.
Correct.
These are local folks.
Yeah, we have there's a couple from Tennessee actually that just moved over, and they've committed their time right now to investing in the leaders and the team on the foundation side, as well as continued spiritual growth for our team on the for-profit side. But majority of our team, outside of the two of them and Colin and myself, are Ugandans. Yeah.
We'll be right back after a short break. If your business or ministry would like to sponsor the Business as Mission podcast, simply email info@thirdpathinitiative.com, and we'll set up a conversation about your needs and goals.
How did the two of you guys get together? I mean, Colin, you're over in Uganda. Jared, you're doing something here. I know you well know you're always into something. Did you meet at Liberty, number one? I think that's probably how you got connected. But where did the idea of, all right, we're going to work together, we're going to make this happen? How did that develop?
I'm going to throw this one back to Jared as well.
I was waiting for Colin. He loves to say,
I love to talk about the basketball. Yeah.
Yeah, he always brings up that we were playing basketball and he was better than me at Liberty on the intramural court. But that's still up for debate, and it's long ago that we can't actually recall what was actually happening. But yeah, we knew each other. That was all I can say. We were acquaintances. We didn't hang out ever outside of the basketball court. I had no idea anything about Colin. I didn't even know he was learning to fly planes. But as God would have it, 5 years later, so beginning of 2020, we got reconnected through a mutual friend, actually, who spent some time in Kyrgyzstan. I think we have a common friend there. His father actually is a great band leader in Kyrgyzstan, but he was a roommate of Colin's in college and was actually at the time in 2020 in my wife and I small group here in Atlanta. And I had been praying for a while coming out of the tech startup space, how to get involved in something international that was sustainable and was having an impact, and didn't really feel like I needed to start it, and brought that up to our small group. And he told me that a mutual friend had a motorcycle shop, is what he said, in Uganda. And I was like, I know nothing about motorcycles or working on them or really Uganda. And so Colin and I got on a phone call a couple months later, and he was back in the States. COVID had happened or started and couldn't get back to East Africa, and was kind of in this dilemma of allowing just the employees there, the few that were on the team, to run the business here on out or stay involved. And he was dating his wife at the time. And so anyways, that's how we got connected. And I heard the story, Mike, and I'm probably a lot like you and others that will hear it. I said, how can I be a part of it? And the Lord had freed up space in our life, my wife and I here in Atlanta, where I could give 40 hours a week of time. And I just said, hey, you've got my time for free. I want to help tell this story. And so that's kind of how our partnership started just over 2 years ago.
Wow. You know, we, from my perspective, sitting up in the nosebleed section, the cheap seats, I'm looking at this, and you can see kind of like a football game where you can see the whole field and all the players in motion. Sometimes when you're on the field, you only know what you're doing and maybe the guy next to you. And from my perspective, watching God orchestrate all of the details of this, it's not something you would have figured out on your own. Not that you're not smart, but I mean, it's just you see the hand of God moving and putting people together at the right time, the right place. Even coming home because of COVID probably had a sinister feel to it, and look what came out of it in the way the business is going.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. No, it's been incredible. As Jared said, it was kind of a crossroads. I mean, we had grown significantly organically. We'd grown from 6 to, I think at the time it was north of 70 or 80 motorcycles. We were in 2 locations, and we had a staff of about 4 or 5 working. But it was one of those times. Yeah, it was a serious prayer request. It was a serious time of seeking discernment and wisdom. It's like, God, I'm now thousands of miles away. I got a great team, but it's a matter of, hey, are there other things that you want me to pursue now that I'm here? Or if I do this too, I'm really praying for a business partner. I see a great vision, and I know you've casted that from the beginning, but also the desire to do it alongside a brother as well was serious. And yeah, it was one of those things that I laid before the Lord. And yeah, it's as funny as it is to say, it's like, and boop, there comes Jared.
Can he still take in basketball, or how does that work out?
No, he could take me now. It's pretty embarrassing, and I'll give it to him. It's not even comparison now. Yeah.
Oh man.
So another lesson we often bring up from our guests like you guys is to point out, don't do this alone. BAM is a team sport.
Absolutely.
And I've heard the story, just the way you expressed it was great, is I really wanted to do this with a brother. I began praying about that. God brought that brother into my life. I mean, there's so much power and comfort and strength in that. And I really appreciate you sharing it. I hear that over and over again. I always try to point it out when I do hear it, that, okay, there's another lesson, which is you don't have to do this alone. You don't have to be Hudson Taylor out there by yourself. You really can do this as a part of a team. So the growth that you described from 70 or 80 motorcycles to now 1,500, did that happen while you were there, Colin, or did it happen after you came back for COVID?
No, really, that happened after I came back. So that's after Jared contacted me. I flew out to Atlanta. We got a conference room and a whiteboard, and we just threw all those years of knowledge, every number, every person, every detail I could onto that thing. And I walked them through, and I shared the keys to the kingdom with him. And he's like, dude, I'm in, right? And that was really a pivotal point in the partnership and the brotherhood there as well. But then we went and we transitioned into a little bit of rebranding, time of prayer and focus, mission, vision, core values. I mean, go through the Traction EOS. Let's build it out. Let's do this right. Let's bring on the right people. Let's pray for the right teams and pray for the right partners. And then make sure that this, yes, it's scalable. We see it. There's a huge pool. I mean, applications, we're busting at the seams. People are lining the doors. But we want to make sure that if we bring on partners, well, first, we know how to steward partnership. And second, that we would be able to pay back as well, that we would honor both sides of the contract.
Yeah. And it's funny, just a quick plug. If they didn't catch the EOS reference, and Gino Wickman would be smiling ear to ear right now, because EOS is a great tool for BAM companies. It really is. So if those not familiar with it, make a note of that. Check it out. It's pretty cool stuff. All right. So now you're back in the States. Are you moving back over? I mean, I know you don't know the plan of God for the rest of your life, but you, for now you're running this prospering business that has grown exponentially while you weren't there. A lot of prayer, bringing in partners, all the things you would do, but you weren't there, which is a beautiful thing, right? That this is not two Americans doing it.
No.
This is a God thing. God is doing something there, but he's obviously using you guys to get it done. That occurred when you weren't there. How did you watch that happen? What did that feel like?
That was, I think that's one of the coolest things. I could speak for both Jared and myself, is like being able to work with a team that catches the fire, the passion, the vision, that are willing to learn, that are willing to be molded. Not that we have all the answers, but like we want to steward leadership to honor the Lord, and we want to build up these future leaders. We want to give them the access and the space to make those tougher decisions and to walk through those with them. So as we were growing and scaling, I mean, we would check in with our team all the time. I mean, we were doing heartbeat checks all the time. We're not scaling past the table, but we're also want to make sure that like, hey, you're okay. Because a lot of this we realize is you're out in the field, you're doing a lot of background checks, you're vetting on future clients, you're serving them at the table, you're monitoring and evaluating through compliance, and we're working alongside them. We've got our tech set up. We're monitoring, the accountability side of both finances and the trackers within the assets, but we're still thousands of miles away. And so we needed to be able to have a space where there's open and honest communication, and then to continue to grow and build out those systems and processes and the people so that we could bring on more bikes. We could launch more bikes, more members. So really, I mean, it was incredibly excited. We both loved this leadership build out, but it was a little bit slow and steady at first.
I would imagine there were scary moments when you looked and thought, oh my gosh, what if we just turned the nuclear reactor on? Look, it's
oh yeah.
How do you control this
thing? When you first send that 6-figure check overseas and it's deployed through assets and they drive out, and you're just like, wow, here we go, Lord. I mean, it's one thing when it's 6 bikes. It's another thing when it's 60 bikes. It's another thing when it's 106 bikes. But yeah, I mean, I attribute it back to a team that's just, they've caught the vision, and they're incredible leaders, and they're ready to serve.
What a great testimony to what God wants to do in and through business that you guys are living out. Is the plan as it stands today to go back to live, or are you guys going to be going back and forth? I'm really curious, and I mentioned this to you before we started the conversation, that I really want to hear more about how you're running this business from the U.S. And I have a reason for that. There's method to the madness of saying, I think a lot of people that are circling around the rim and the BAM movement feel like they've got to move overseas. And maybe they do. I mean, I can't say what the will of God is for anybody, but you guys are proving, no, they don't always have to do that. So how is that working out? How do you actually do that? And I know you mentioned technology and trackers, and there's a lot of trust and communication that goes on. But how are you doing it, and what is the long-term play there?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jared, I'll let you speak to that first, and then I'll piggyback off you.
Yeah, I think the consistency of meeting with our leaders has been a crucial part. So if I think traction is like business gospel, but anyways, it's been monumental for us in gaining traction. I say that a lot of times entrepreneurs float in the clouds. I've been in businesses where that was happening. And what traction does for you is it, unfortunately or fortunately, you smack down hard on the sidewalk, and then you get to choose if you want to crawl and walk and then run, gain traction, right? And it's probably going to be up a hill. It's not going to be a flat or low, downhill sidewalk. But what traction does is it gets you down where you can actually feel gravity a little bit more in your business, and you can gain traction. And so for us, we have a level 10 meeting. That's the verbiage they use in traction, but every Monday with our corporate leadership team. And that's huge. It's the most important 90 minutes of our meeting schedule during the week, followed by a one-on-one meeting with all of our direct reports, which we do that for 2 reasons. One, because we ask 5 questions, and half of the questions around how can we serve them and how is their spiritual and physical, emotional health. But the other reason we do it is, and we get an update on the business, obviously, in that 30 minutes. But the other reason we do it is we expect and we keep them accountable for replicating that to all of their direct reports. And so it's a downward thing. When we have 35 full-time people on the team now, and everybody in our business should be getting a one-on-one conversation every single week. And for us, that allows us, if we're consistent with that, allows us from 8,000 miles away to have a much better pulse on what's happening with our people. The people are healthy, the business will be healthy. There's some variables with that, but I really believe that if you have the right people, you can run a thriving business.
Yeah. And that's one of the things too. I would say, obviously it's not built overnight. There was a lot of days spent under mango trees praying about, God, what is this going to look like, and how are we going to operate? There's a lot of systems and processes that are built, that are refined, that are rewritten, that are refined, that are rewritten and refined. And, I attribute it really back to the intentional relationships and the slowness of getting to know somebody, getting to trust somebody, and allowing that space to be trusted as well. And, with our core 4 that we have that have been with us, 4 years or more, it really starts with them, because they're the ones who are also conducting first, second, and third round interviews with new people, but they're also identifying, hey, who also is going to step up and really be able to integrate themselves into a culture that has been built at Pure Flow, and who's going to walk into the space. Because yes, there's accountability along the way, and we've built those systems right to where I feel like it's very hard just to take a direct transfer and just go take it to Zanzibar or something like that. That there is accountability within all different branches, but when you boil it back, it really is those years of investing in relationships and seeing a greater vision. And I think that's one of the beautiful things that Jared has attributed to in the beginning when he came on, was yes, the fire and the passion, but also like casting the vision and bringing on the four plus myself of like, hey, like, God, I'm joining alongside, and I can see, from a different angle too, what God's laying on my heart, and casting a vision that like people are getting excited about, and we're all doing this together.
Wow. I hope the listeners can hear. I can see, because we're doing this via video, the very obvious relationship of respect and trust that the two of you have. You don't always see that in partners, and that I know is reflecting to the rest of the team on how you treat each other, you work together for the good of the whole. And that's just for me, that's incredibly encouraging to see. What does the next year hold for you guys? If you just trying to look over the horizon.
And to finish off the last question, Colin and his wife spent some time there this year. We're both expecting babies soon. So the next season of life, well, we're not sure about, and we probably shouldn't make too many plans for. But we do get over there. Like,
make any plan.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm sure you've got some advice for us there, Mike. And listeners can call us up and send us all the advice. We'll take it. But we go over. We try to 3 or 4 times a year, and be very intentional with those times to invest in our team, to train them on things that we don't feel like are going to be beneficial via Zoom or via email or videos. And so we really try to be intentional with that. We try to schedule interviews with key leaders, key hires during that time. That's a big thing. And we just want to spend a lot of like face-to-face, shoulder-to-shoulder time with those core people, because for them, it is like, it's a huge shot of something good. They just love it. And it's great for us too, because it just continues to deepen trust, but it also continues to expose why we're doing what we're doing, and continue to like allow the vision to pull us, and we get more and more aligned on that. The next year is super exciting. You mentioned Pure Flow Boda at the front. Really, our name's Pure Flow, and there's a reason. I tried to change the name when Colin said we rebranded. I tried to change the name like a lot. I went through a couple marketing agencies and 200 logos, and there's a word in Pure Flow. I'll let the listeners figure it out. You can use all 8 letters and spell a different word, and God revealed to me, we're not changing it. But with that, it's just Pure Flow right now. And right now the asset is Bodas. But the reason it's just Pure Flow and not Pure Flow Boda is because we finance income generating assets. And so those assets are going to continue to evolve, meaning it'll be Bodas plus whatever we feel is the right next asset to finance, where we can add value to members and get them around the table, whether it's a vehicle or not. We're looking to finish this year ahead of schedule at 2,000 active members, and we'll have about 50 people on our team to finish this year, Lord willing. That's the quarterly rock. So we're praying into that one.
Yeah.
And then the next 1 year, we're looking to raise more capital and go from 2,000 to 5,000 active members served. And so that'll be a little less multiplier than the last 2 years has been, but it's still a big lofty jump.
That's where percentages fool people, right?
Yeah.
The raw numbers are big there. So that's exciting to see. So let me clarify something you said, though. Is the website pureflowboda.com?
It is pureflowboda.com.
Okay.
You're spot on with that right now. But if you know how URLs work, it was there's an HVAC company in Raleigh, actually near Colin's house. It's Pure Flow.
Yeah.
And I haven't mustered the strength to buy their URL yet.
Hey, somebody wanted to charge me $50,000 for MikeBear.com, and I said, golly, am I late to the party? So no.
You don't love your name that much, do you?
No,
Mike?
no, I don't. So Colin, what do you see in the future? I think I just echoing what Jared said, or do you other things as well? I mean, family-wise, baby's on the way. That's exciting. That does change everything in a great way, believe me.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's funny. We joke too because, well, my wife's due, and well, it could be a matter of hours, it could be a matter of days. It's T minus 2.5 weeks,
Oh,
so
okay.
we're seeing. But we've got two boys coming here soon, shortly. So we've got some apprentices, we've got some internships coming up here in the next few
That's
years.
right.
But no, we're excited. I honestly, to be honest, I agree with Jared. I mean, the amount of people served, the new assets that we can service as well. Like I'm excited about that. But truly too, I mean, it's our team. There's incredible opportunity for growth within this team. We've been very, very intentional with building out corporate structures and leadership and building out branch leadership and open positions and growth within the company. And I mean, I think that's what really gets us excited too, is we're seeing these young adults being molded and crafted by God, and we get to harness a lot of that time too, where we get to speak into their life and we get to see them own these opportunities where like tough decisions come by their desk and they don't pass them off.
Yeah.
One of our core values is move towards solutions, and that's it. We get to see that day in, day out is problems are coming and problems will come. And you got issues with loan sharks, you get issues with taxes and compliance, and you name it, there's going to be issues. But we have a team that owns their role and they move towards solutions and they work so well together. And so I'm excited about fostering that and continuing to see a lot of these team members grow in Christ and grow in opportunities.
That's a fantastic place for us to just stop. And as I often say, come in for a landing. I'm not out of deference to you, but it's a good place to stop, because that does tell me business's mission is business, but it's business as mission. And the ultimate mission of God is people. And you guys are living that out on so many different levels. Guys, this is a great story. I really look forward to hearing more in the future, following you, maybe even learning how to drive a Boda someday, and if I get really adventurous in my old age. But thanks so much, guys. So they can learn more at Pure Flow Boda, BODA.com.
Yeah.
It's Colin Winrich and Jared Folks. I guess you guys are the partners, but there's an army back in Uganda running this day to day, and just hearing these stories, I hope others are as encouraged as I am as they listen to this podcast. So guys, just thank you. God bless. I look forward to hearing more in the future about what he's doing through you and getting to know you all better.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for the space.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Business as Mission podcast. We invite you to become part of the story by supporting the BAM podcast at patreon.com/BAM Stories. There's a link in the notes with this episode. For more information, go to thirdpathinitiative.com or tryventure.com. Please share this podcast and give us a review wherever you listen. If you'd like to help with expenses and expansion of the Business as Mission podcast, you can become a donor through Patreon. Just go to patreon.com/BAM Stories. This podcast is brought to you by generous donors and sponsors. You can become one by going to patreon.com/BAM Stories.